So in the last session of today's group buy, we are welcoming Andre Melancia, and he's going to talk about, I think this was the top voted session too for the entire group buy for April, hacking SQL Server. So take it away, Andre.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brent. It's a bit scary for that to happen to be the most voted, so it's a bit stressful. First of all, thank you very much for having me. It's great. I've been seeing the last sessions, the last session and the sessions before recorded. So yes, this is the last session. This is hacking SQL Server. And I should mention this is not illegal. What we're going to do here is not illegal, so this is important to say. We've been doing this session for quite a long time. This is I actually raised the version number for the demos, so this is like 26 or 27, something like that. So every time is different, and sometimes things that used to work and we used to be able to hack stuff, they stopped working, and then we changed it around. Something else just stopped working as well. So maybe we'll see a few examples of stuff that should be a bit better in terms of security, but most of the things are actually things you can actually configure. So these are not actual security bugs. These are people bugs. So okay, so first of all, who am I? Okay, so my name, again, is Andre Melancia. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I do mostly SQL Server and Azure training. I also do consulting, and I own a company which is called Lunar Cat. That's the symbol for the company, which is my cat's paw. My cat actually has a paw that has the different toe like that. So I actually decided to use it because it's just boring to hire a designer, right? We basically do cat stuff. If you go to the website, all you see is a message saying cats are sleeping or something like that, because I haven't had the time to do the website because like most people, we do stuff for someone else and we forget to do stuff for ourselves. Okay, so if you want to contact me, my contacts are in my very, very simple web page at andy.pt. Just go there. You can connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever, or just send me an email, and I will try to reply as soon as possible. Okay, so that's about that for me, and let's start the session then. So as I mentioned, this is a hacking session, but technically for law enforcement, we just say this is a security session because we don't want to say we're doing anything wrong. Okay, so the problem is, this I figured out some time ago, the problem is not with the software, the problem is with people. So people do not configure stuff correctly. If you configure stuff correctly in terms of security, you're going to do fine. You're not going to have a problem. Most people just do the default installation. They just don't care. And then they come into problems. They get hacked. And then they get fired mostly. So don't do that, okay? Think about what you're doing. Think about the stuff you're using. Think about security flaws it might have. Think about configuration. But basically, this is your fault as a person, not the computer's fault, okay? So Microsoft software is just perfect. It has no bugs whatsoever. Okay, so let's give this one a try. If you guys have any questions, I would ask Brent to relay the questions as we go along.
Sure.
I'm going to do some 2 or 3 demos. Don't leave the questions to the end. Just keep asking them. And Brent, over 5-10 minutes period, I'll just ask for some questions. And if you have any questions, I prefer to answer them as they go along. Okay, so I really have to say this slide is very important. So the first times I did this session, I actually called it NSA Secrets. And I used to have problems with this. So every time I went to the airport, people looked at me funny. I didn't know what it was. I actually got frisked a lot. So just to be safe, this is not NSA Secrets anymore. This is called Hacking SQL Server. That's about it. But still, the demos we are going to do have to do with NSA, have to do with MI6, okay? So they're not real. They're fake. They're completely fictitious. but still they exist. So basically, a few 1 or 2 years ago, I actually did some sessions that had MI6 examples like James Bond. I'm a real huge famous James Bond. And then the next session we started to do with the hacking stuff, that I actually got the NSA secrets, which basically was the NSA are the bad guys. They sniff on everyone, so they're the great bad guys that we can use for these examples. And the good guys, the ones that actually saved the world, we all know this. We've seen the films. The good guys are the James Bond guys and the MI6 guys. So they are the guys that are going to get hacked, right? So NSA bad guys, MI6 good guys. So let's go with that for the demos, okay? So a few requirements for the demos. I will make the demos available for you, I promise. This weekend, I will make them available on my website. Currently, it's just a single page, but it's going to be a single page with a small link in the bottom that says demos here, and you can actually see the demos for this session and some of the other sessions before. So basically what you need is, for some of these demos, actually SQL Server 2000 might just work, but you have row-level security, you have dynamic data masking, and some other stuff, and for that you need 2016, obviously, because they only came around for 2016. In terms of editions, I think they will work on basically every edition around, and most of these I will not mention, but if I don't mention it, they have worked at least for 2012, maybe before. And I am using in my computer 2000, actually VNext, not 2016, still the last VNext version, because I haven't had time to update it, but I think they work pretty much the same. Okay, so the first problem we have is something we call man in the middle. So hopefully every computer guy knows about this. And man in the middle is a kind of attack you can have where you have, I'm not sure, Brent, can you see my mouse around?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, so yeah, where you have a victim, and that victim actually tries to connect to a server. So if the victim is a female, you have, if actually the attacker is a female, you can't have a man in the middle, you have a woman in the middle. So the politically correct term is a person in the middle, okay? So, but since technically you can't say that, I'm still having with man in the middle here, so who cares? Okay, so basically you have a victim. A victim usually connects to a server. This can be a SQL Server connection. This can be a web server connection or any other types of connections. And then you have an attacker somewhere, the one in red, and the attacker tries to hijack the connection in some way. I'm going to show you a list of possible ways. I'm not going to get a lot into that because there are tons of ways you can do this. I'm just going to show you the easy ways you can do that with SQL Server. Okay, so basically, just to contextualize this, with SQL Server has a protocol called TDS. So this is not new. This is really old stuff, about at least 30 years, I would say. And TDS stands for Tabular Data System, the Tabular Data Stream. And this was actually invented by Sybase, which were the guys that invented SQL Server in the beginning. Then they actually got together with the Microsoft, blah, blah, blah. Something happened. Microsoft got it. Sybase actually spinned it off to ASE, and it's been there ever since. So this works really well with ASE as well. So it's kind of the same thing. Although the demos we're going to do will probably work with a lot of stuff like Oracle or MySQL or even a web server if you don't protect it well enough. Okay, so obviously, I hope you guys know this. The default port is 1433. That's the default port for the default instance in SQL Server. And there is a debate, and I've seen a post by Danny Cherry. I think it was a few months ago, maybe late last year, where we talked about the possibility of changing the default port to something else to make it more secure. Obviously, the big problem here is you have to think where your attacks come from. So if your attacks come from the internet, yeah, that might be a good idea. It takes a little while for the attacker to do his thing, but eventually he will attack you, so it's only a matter of time. But the biggest problem is your biggest attack actually comes from inside your own company most of the times. So you have employees that just don't like what they're getting paid, you know, something like that. Employees that just don't like the boss, they're going to get fired, something like that. So something's going to happen, and in most cases, the biggest problem you have is not outside hacking, it's hacking from someone in your own company that's going to cost you money. So one of the options here is, okay, do we change the default port, yes or no? So Danny Cherry actually has a post about that. I can't seem to find the link, but it's there somewhere, where he actually talks about this, and the answer is obviously no. Doesn't make any sense, because in the end, security by obfuscation doesn't really make any sense, because you're going to crack it eventually, right? So one of the examples of that is actually Azure. You have, for instance, you have virtual machines in Azure using port 3389 for remote desktop. And in the beginning, those ports were actually big numbers, like 40,000, 50,000. And apparently Microsoft figured out it wasn't worth the hassle. So they just decided to use that, because eventually you would figure out that was a remote desktop, right? So it's easy enough to figure it out. So basically, it doesn't really make any sense to change the port just for security reasons. It might actually be practical for other reasons, but it doesn't make any sense for security reasons. Okay, so let's talk about the man in the middle kind of thing. So if you are an old guy like me that's actually used SQL Server 2000, 7.5, 7, 6.5, stuff like that, you probably know this existed. So up to SQL Server 2000, which means 2007, 6.5, and all the way up to the beginning, which I haven't tried. I started on 6.5. The login packets, the first packet that you got on the TCP connection was actually unencrypted. So basically, you could see the username, and you saw kind of a weak hash for a password. That you just got the hash, you just took it home, and you tried to hack it, and it was easy enough to hack the hash. So that was a big issue with security in terms of SQL at the time. So they completely solved this problem. So the problem was solved. So this was the first one, was then the login packet. So they solved the problem in 2005 in a great way. So they actually encrypted the login packet. The login packet is perfect now, but everything else is encrypted. That is by default, obviously. If you install SQL Server by default, the remaining packets stay unencrypted. So basically, this is what you have all the way up to now. So I actually haven't tried it on 2017. I tried it on last VNext, which I have on my computer, and this still happens then. So by default, it does not encrypt the connections, which it should. But let's go ahead with this. So, okay, there are a lot of ways you can try man in the middle. This applies to not only SQL Server connections, but everything else. So the hard way is, if you are a system administrator guy, you can try any of these ways. Okay, the easiest way obviously is to just disconnect the cable and connect one to Ethernet boards on the attacker's computer, and just get the two informations there. And that's the basic way of all. But obviously there are more sophisticated attacks that a system administrator should know about. But I'm a lazy guy. This takes a long time. I'm really lazy to do that, okay? So there is an easier way. An easier way is, okay, so basically what we need to understand this. So we have the victim. We just want the victim to stop using the original connection and go to the attacker's connection. So there is an easy way. Okay, just change the host file on the victim. So that's really, really easy, okay? So yes, the question you might ask is, ever since you have Vista, not XP, but Vista, you need administrative privileges to change the host file. Yes. But think about this. You are the administrator, the domain administrator or something like that. You obviously have those kinds of permissions, so you can do that. So if you work inside that organization and you have permissions for that, okay, that's done. You can crack it. But again, even if you're not, you can just send some sort of email to the guy so that the guy clicks on something, and then a pop-up of a window appears that says, do you want to try this, yes or no? And everybody says yes, right? Because that's one of the biggest flaws that you have with user account control is people just say yes. They don't read what's in it. So if people actually click on it, and most people actually do, even computer guys, you're going to get hacked, and the host file is going to be different. Okay, so that is one way you can divert the traffic from the victim to the attacker. So imagine you have a server called server, and you have an attacker with IP 1.2.3.4. So you just say on the host file that on the victim's computer that the server actually has the 1.2.3.4 IP address. So that goes to the attacker directly, and the victim doesn't know about it. So that's a way. One of the easiest ways you can do this with SQL Server specifically, so this is generic, with SQL specifically, is to change the aliases. So that has the exact same needs, so you need to be an administrator for that, but you can actually go to the configuration manager. You can go to the real old client configuration tool, which existed up to SQL Server 2000 or 2005, something like that, or you can just go to the registry. So this is the cookbook, you can actually use it. Okay, so I've done the homework for you. This is the way you can actually do it. Okay, so because I know you guys are as lazy as me, okay, so here we go. Okay, so let's try one of these. So this is the first demo. Let's hope this works because demo gods and stuff like that. Okay, so let's try this. So first of all, I'm going to show you the SQL Server Configuration Manager, and one of the things we can see here at first is the aliases. So I'm going to use two. I'm going to use this one and the SQL 3, which is a virtual machine somewhere in the cloud. I'm going to explain that later. I'm just going to use it for a small demo. And afterwards, we're going to use something which I called local 12345, which basically is a connection to my local hosts to port 12345, which I would simulate that as the attacker's port. So basically, the attacker so far has done its job, changing either the aliases or the host file or something like that to make sure that the attack actually goes to the attacker. And the attacker will be called local 12345, just for us to know where we are connecting to. Okay, so this is the first demo, and yes, you can see I'm a big fan of James Bond. I'm also a really old school guy, so you probably know what this is. And
Yep.
yeah, so this is good stuff. Actually, last week I did a virtual chapter for Pass for Portuguese, one where I actually got a lot of kitties and cats and stuff like that. So apparently this is the thing. I'm going to use it from now on. Okay. So the demos go like this. So basically, all you have to do is create a database, which an empty database, no special requirements, just create it. They're created already, and I'm going to drop everything that might just exist before. So before I have to connect with. So Hobbs is actually my computer, you know, the big cat, fake cat with the kids, because my computers are actually themed like cartoons for whatever. So this is going to fail, obviously. So this is obviously something I want to do, just to clean up anything that I might have in that database before, because I'm too lazy to just drop the database and recreate it. Okay, so let's create a database which has a table which has some fields, an ID, which is a sequential ID for the films, then a film name, the year of the film, the guy who stars in the film, Sean Connery most of the times, Roger Moore, and then I actually repeat the column because I'm going to need it for demos, and just have the first name just to be different, and then I'm going to have a payment column, which we're going to see as well. So I'm actually going to run this and see if this works. So obviously, I have a table here, which in total has 26 records, and we're going to use that in the future for some stuff. Okay, so one of the demos we're actually going to do is this. So I'm actually going to connect. I'm actually going to try to use Wireshark. So Wireshark is here already. I filtered that to the specific ports that SQL Server uses, as some of the ports I'm actually going to use. So I'm just going to start this here. Continue that saving, yes, okay. So I'm actually having to connect to, I'm actually going to have to connect to a different computer. So there is a limitation with the Windows kernel, which tells you that you cannot sniff the packets that go from your computer to your own computer. So that is not a flaw. That's actually a very good thing in terms of security, but it's terrible in terms of demos. So I'm going to have to connect to a machine in Azure just for this specific one. So okay. So hopefully that's connected. So somewhere here I actually got packets, but I'm going to clear them up and just start them again, because that's just trash for me. Okay, so one of the things I do not recommend you using is IntelliSense. So just turn off IntelliSense, because otherwise you're going to get a lot of trash in terms of packets. Because this is not a limitation on SQL Server, just the Management Studio, because Management Studio is going to try to connect to the database over and over again every time you move your cursor to try to figure out stuff for you. So you don't want that. So you've seen the table. It's just the normal table. Now I'm going to try to use it just with the demo. So one of the things I should mention is all these axes here are just stuff to pad stuff, so we can find it faster in terms of the sniffing stuff. So one of the stuff we're going to do is, okay, I'm just going to stop because I don't want anything else. And one of the X's are actually here. So this is a way I get to actually be easier to find the stuff. So you have a sniffing comment here, and then you have a select something somewhere down here. So select star, something like that, get date, something like that, which is basically the query we did here. Okay, so first problem that you see, by default, SQL Server actually has packets and encrypted, and you can see not only the results, but you can actually see the query that's being sent to the server. And one of the other problems that you have is all the comments that you include in the query go there as well. So this is a problem for two reasons. First reason, you're actually adding stuff to the packet, so you don't need all the stuff. So we should actually reduce that to make the queries go faster. This is not a security issue, just a performance issue, because as you can see, all the stuff actually that doesn't fit on a single packet. So I have to send 2 packets just to get a reply. If I just sent the stuff here, it would be much simpler. So the second problem is that some people actually have comments like this. So I've seen comments like this, which someone says, oh, you should try this with user something and password something. And obviously, if you are a computer guy, you know that people have passwords like, your favorite team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or your favorite team 2017, if not 2016, 15, 14, something like that. So it's actually very predictable to be able to figure out what the password is for a person. So don't. Okay, so just keep it as safe as possible. Don't make comments like this where you include the password or even the user you're supposed to try, okay? Because for 2005 on, you don't have the username. But if you put the username here, then you know what the username is. Obviously, if you do something like you try to get current user as a result of a query, you obviously get the name of the current user, so that's a problem as well. So try to avoid to do that in a production environment. Okay, so this is the query that you have, but you also have the reply. So the reply actually sees stuff like Daniel Craig. Up there, you see something like license to kill, something like that. So all the information is here. And the stuff that you don't see, which is a lot of ... are the integer stuff. And but basically, this protocol, it's well known, so everybody knows what's in here, so everybody can see exactly what's in this protocol. Okay, so but this is using Wireshark. But the problem is, I can actually see the information, but I can't do anything with it. So one of the things I actually try to do is there is stuff for this in Linux, but there isn't stuff for this in Windows. So I want to change the packets, but I want to change the packets on the fly. I don't want to change it and see it later. I want to change it and see it now. So I actually created a sort of a proxy thing. I just got some code from the internet that did this for TCP stuff, and I changed it a bit to add more stuff. So basically I'm gonna connect. I'm gonna sniff on my local host on port 12345, and then redirect all the connections to port 1433, also on my local host. And I'm actually gonna change some stuff. So one of the stuff that I don't like is George Lazenby, great guy, but you can actually change some stuff. Okay, so maybe Brent, you are an American, so basically you are the agent that's going to try to infiltrate this.
Oh.
So you are Brent, okay? This is Austin Powers or something like that, okay? So also an American, technically an American, tries to speak English, British English, but still is the guy's an American. And David Niven is probably like the worst Bond ever, okay? That was a terrible film, okay? I'm glad someone did a different Casino Royale again. So basically, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was actually kind of a comic kind of thing, not really an action thing. I would say. So okay, so yeah, let's not get into that. Okay. Okay, so we have the proxy running here, and now I'm gonna try to try to make this so you can actually see this stuff. So the second demo, I'm actually gonna connect this to the attacker's computer. So I'm going to change the connection all the way up to the attacker's computer, which is on port 12345. And right now, oh, sorry about the beep. Somehow it happened. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think it only happens once. So you have stuff like declare, edition, stuff like that. This is stuff that Management Studio actually asks you, but it is okay. But so currently, all you see in the black stuff on the left is actually stuff from the attacker. So we are going to see what the attacker is seeing. So let's try to run this. And if I try to run this, the connection is telling me I'm connecting to the right computer, which is going all the way through the attacker, but apparently I don't know that. The attacker knows that, but I don't know that. So just a curious fact, I'm going to try to change the database, and just to figure out what the database is, I'm going to actually change this. Oh, sorry about the noise. Sorry, guys. Sorry about the noise. Not sure where this comes from. But, I'm not sure if this helps. So, okay. I'm actually going to change this to group by. Okay, it's lower now, I think. So basically, this is all the stuff you had to do just to figure out a list of databases and then select the database for the connection. So okay, we're here. And now we are on the right database and we are on the right server, but still the attacker is sniffing all our traffic. That's okay. We're not aware of this. Now we're going to try to do the same query as before, but just run it. And something red happened somewhere in the attacker's window. So what's going to happen here? Oh, I forgot one thing. I forgot to add spaces. Sorry about that. So we actually have Brent Ozar with sort of a weird kind of thing. Oh, I'm not going to change that now. Oh, okay. So I forgot to actually add spaces to remove that stuff. But basically, we used to have David Niven here and George Lazenby, which is still there in the end. Sorry about that, Brent. But still, we actually changed the information somehow. So if you think about this, this is the MI6 database, and currently Brent, which is an agent for NSA, actually infiltrated the MI6 database, which is okay. But the thing is, it's there. If you do some sort of a report, you are authorized to go to England and do whatever kind of secret stuff you have to do to spy on the British stuff. But still, it doesn't change the database. It only changed the information that the client got to see. So next step, one other thing. So this is useful for a multi-tools thing. So if you try to do this with, for instance, the payment column, you actually have a payment column which says Sean Connery, which actually got paid all this money. Okay, and if you see the payment column, something actually happened here, and somewhere Sean Connery actually got a million, a billion, whatever kind of zeros it has. Okay, so I actually changed this as well. It doesn't really show, but I changed it. And the one below I didn't. So how did I do that? I actually changed it in binary form somewhere down here. So I actually said it has to be the number. So you actually have two same numbers, one prefixed with Sean and the other one with the, I think it's David Craig, something like that. And I actually said, if you see these bytes, this integer, you actually change that to €1 billion or dollars or whatever it is. Okay, so that's one way you can actually do that. So this is still not enough, because basically we're changing the information the client sees, but the information in the database is still the same. So let's try to change this, and okay, and let's do the same query again, or actually a different one, which actually says escalation example demo. So that's the only thing it's going to say. And if you ask me why I have the get date here, is for you guys to see I'm not faking this. There is no trick. This is happening in real time. This is just happening in European Portuguese, Greenwich Mean Time kind of thing. Okay, so I'm not supposed to see this, right? So technically, I was supposed to see something that said escalation example demo, but in fact, I actually got something else. So what exactly did I get? So I actually changed it around again. And whenever I saw escalation example demo or something else, this is entirely up to you. You can actually do this anywhere else. So I actually created a login called Austin Powers with a weird password and changed the guy to be a sysadmin and add it to the sysadmin role. So, and then I actually sent the Shagadelic exploit successful kind of message. So basically this was easy enough to do. And to confirm that this actually exists, this was the logins before. I'm going to do a refresh. And now I actually have Austin Powers here, which is also a great secret agent, perfect guy, really funny guy, doesn't know how to dance, but great guy. So if you have server roles, you're actually a sysadmin here now. So what is the problem here? The problem here is, okay, so you were a sysadmin, and obviously this is also kind of the permissions that you have. If you were not a sysadmin, you would not be able to raise a new user to sysadmin as well. So that is also a security concern. Don't give too much permissions to people. But the point is, I actually changed information. I'm now a sysadmin. I can actually log in with that username and that password and change whatever I want in that database. So basically, the database was just hacked. If that user is strong enough to execute commands, you're actually able to expand that attack all the way up to your Active Directory, change whatever stuff on a different server. You might be able to do that depending on the level of security that your SQL Server is configured to do. So the problem is, if you configure it correctly, you're not going to have these problems, but if you configure it just by default, these problems are going to happen. So, okay, but this is how you crack it. How do you solve it? So, easy way to do it. So, you just go here to the protocols here in the Configuration Manager, and basically you just say force encryption yes. You can actually do it on the connection string in the client side. That's exactly the same thing. Either one being active and the connection is encrypted forcefully. Okay, so this is still not enough. Just to mention, this is still not enough, because this doesn't guarantee that you're actually talking to the wrong server. That is also a possibility, because the attacker can actually fake a different server with the same tables and stuff like that. You actually connect that to their encrypted, but it might not be the correct server. So you should always include a certificate. I'm not going to go into that because that's a bit boring, but it's easy enough to include a certificate, and then make sure the authenticity of the computer you're connecting to is the real one. Okay, so one of the things you have to do, which is normal, is to just restart the server. Okay, and while I'm going to do that, I'm just going to stop this thing here, otherwise it's going to crash, and just correct one of the things I should have corrected, which is I'm doing this in binary terms, so I should have some spaces. The strings should be the same size. Okay, so hopefully this is done by now. Yeah, I'm going to start it again. Okay. And now I'm going to try this one again. So if I try to connect to it again, Okay, so this is normal because the connection was dead, but I've started the connection again. But all I see here is complete gibberish, so I don't get to see anything. This is just the encrypted stuff, so just bits and bytes you cannot understand. So the attacker is going, has that connection going through him, but he cannot see exactly what's happening there. So that is actually a good thing. So if I try to do this, the information is still there. So it's unchanged. So we're back in business again. So it's completely safe now. Okay, so this is the first demo, I would say. This is the first demo. Brent, do you have any questions for me in terms of this first demo?
Two people said in the GoToWebinar Q&A that they were scared by how easy that was. WJ Anderson asks, sorry if I missed it, but do you have to have the default SA user enabled for this to work?
No, definitely not. You can actually use this on any user. It does have a free to be sysadmin. For you to create a user that's a sysadmin, yes, then you do have to have some sort of privileges, security admin, sysadmin, something like that. But if you just want to hack it in the first demos, not take over, if you just want to change the information, like do an insert, an update, then you do not have to be a system administrator to do that. You just have to have permissions on that specific table. Simple as that.
And then Vioril says, do you how much overhead will the encryption have in terms of performance?
Actually have that question a lot of times. So that is actually a good question. That kind of depends on the information that's going around, but mostly the first part of the connection is the worst part. So if you have certificates, if you do the connection and the keys go around, and then you have the validate the certificate and all that, it takes a while. So for the first query that you have in a connection, that's going to take a while. I can't really tell you how much, but it's okay, it may be 20-30% more than it should, but from there on, queries go maybe 1-2% more than they should in terms of time that they take to encrypt and unencrypt. It's not significant. If you have a recent server, that's kind of irrelevant. You should just ignore it. But yes, the initial connection does take you longer. Okay, so that is the only issue I would say in terms of speeds.
All right. And then one more, Daniel says, are you going to talk about certificates and verifying the name of the SQL server you're connecting to? No, just in terms of time and whatnot.
I have a slide for that. For that. So yes, even if you don't use certificates, just say yes where it says force encryption. Sometimes you might have a situation where you can't do that because maybe you're connecting with a really old server to that, or a really old client that still uses the 2000 kind of drivers or something like that, and then they're not compatible with 2005. That is a possibility that you have, and in that case, you should do that on the client side, on the connection string for the more advanced clients. But in 99% of the cases, that doesn't exist anymore. So I would just say force encryption, yes, at all times. That will solve your problem. And not this one. Wait a minute. This one. So for you to validate, client certificates and all that stuff, just take a look at these links that I put here. They're really boring to present on, really, but you should really read them. And yeah, they are boring. Sorry, but just read the links in here, and you will get up and running with getting that on a server and making sure that that's secure for you. Okay, and yes, occasionally you should maybe just do a Wireshark on your network to see if something else isn't encrypted. So that's probably a good option. I'm not sure if you have any more questions.
Nope,
Okay.
That's good. Keep going.
So I'm just going to mention in a second always encrypted. So always encrypted doesn't work like this. So always encrypted doesn't work on the connection. It actually works on the information inside the connection. So it's complementary. So if you have, so basically the concept here, I'm going to make this simple because it's a bit more complicated than this. if you have a client, the client actually has some keys. There are some keys on the client, some keys on the server. Just see, a 1 hour, 2 hour, whole day session on this, because you really needed to completely understand this. So I'll just make this simple. But basically, the client side, this driver here, the ADR.NET library, actually encrypts the information there. But it does not encrypt the information on the connection thing. It just encrypts the information on the column thing. Okay, so if you have a column, which in the example here is social security number, basically when you send the information there, so when you do an insert or an update, you actually say, yes, I want to send the information there, but the information goes there already encrypted. So the other columns go unencrypted, but that specific sensitive column actually goes encrypted directly to the server. Why? Because this assumes that you cannot trust your DBA with the information. Okay, so you only the developer and the DBA, you need to have the two roles to be able to have the information on and steal the information. So that is actually a good thing. So you should use always encrypted. That is a good thing, but it has problems. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. So this, as I mentioned, is by column, and you can have two options in a column. You can actually make them deterministic or random. So you see the colors here. If it's random, it's green, so it's good. So every time you say something like ABC, it goes all the way up to the encrypted parts on the server, and actually has some bits and bytes which are different every time. So every time you say ABC, it's different every time on the server. But when it comes back, the client will actually decrypt that. So he needs to decrypt it on the client side, and he gets ABC every time because it's salted something like that, and it works. Okay, it just works. Okay, think about it as just working. But there is a problem for that. So if you have a million records on a column, or a million records on a table, you will have a problem with using wheres. Okay, so if you say where something equals to ABC, or where something equals to a specific country, you're going to have to send all the rows all the way up to the client so we can decrypt them and get them. That's where the deterministic comes along. So deterministic says if you encrypt ABC, that's going to say bits and bytes, but it's going to be the same bits and bytes every time. So that helps in terms of sending the information all the way up to the server that says, oh, I want all the clients that say ABC. That's okay. But ABC is already encrypted when it goes to the client, and it's compared encrypted. So deterministic works for that. But you should hack it somehow, right? But there is a way to hack it. So you can actually understand it from the redness in the deterministic parts, how you hack it. So if you have random stuff like in the last column, it's different every time. So I'm actually using the country column and try to always encrypt the country column, and it's different every time. So if you want to get clients from Portugal or from the UK or from whatever it is, you will need to get all the information. But if it is deterministic, you just say, oh, I want something from Portugal. Yeah, so you get all 4 records that are in red here, okay, which is fine. But there is a problem. Let's imagine you have some companies that go online that say, oh, 70% of our clients are in the UK. Okay, so you just have a table of clients. 70% of the records have the same bits and bytes. So yes, those guys are from the UK. And then you take those statistics and see the rest of the guys. So from social engineering, from marketing, from whatever stuff you can get the information, you can actually figure out, counting the number of records, what the records mean. Okay, and for instance, if you have a record that says, for instance, UA, so UA is Ukraine. So if you have a record that says Ukraine, then you will immediately know all the records that are from Ukraine. So that's easy enough to do. So that's the way you hack it. You hack it through deterministic, actually repeat stuff, and with repetition, you can actually figure it out. Okay, so that's always encrypted. Any questions about this?
Nope, you're good there.
Okay. So instant file initialization, and be aware that this is not an error. So Brent, you are from the US, and you guys use Zs, which you call Z.
Yes.
Okay. So the rest of the world, including Portugal, actually uses S. Actually, we use Z. But in English, we actually say with an S. So this is going to be a rebel kind of thing. to say, okay, so instant file initialization. If you install it, this is not new, this is actually quite old, but if you install it with 2016, you actually have a wizard kind of thing that says, do you want to include the grant perform volume maintenance, task privilege, blah, 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 so that you can have instant file initialization. And if you really don't need it, don't use it, okay? Reason for that is, imagine you have a hard disk. Your hard disk has some information which is old information. And then you get that hard disk and you add a normal file, an MDF file or something like that, to the hard disk, and you use instant file initialization. If you do that, you're not going to clean that information. The information is still going to be there from the previous data that you have there. So what can you do about it? Well, it's simple enough. Just take a copy of it and then try to see it with a hexadecimal editor or something like that. Try to recover the information. So the recommendation here is always just don't use all instant file initialization. It's a security risk because you don't know what kind of information you have on the hard disks previously, okay? So that is a security risk, but yes, there are situations where you really, really need it. The same way as before, you might need some deterministic stuff because you really, really needed that in terms of not sending all the information to the client. So it's a trade-off. You have to decide in terms of security what you have to do. So instant file initialization, just avoid it. Okay, so any questions with this one?
Yeah, there was Daniel asks, what kind of permissions does a user need to view raw data inside an MDF file if they get a hold of the MDF file?
So that would depend on the user that SQL Server is running on. So in most cases that I've seen, if you are the domain administrator, you just get to see everything, okay? So that's because it's not configured properly. This hasn't got anything to do with instant file initialization. This has to do with how you configure the users. Actually, here, the example is good here. So you have the account name. You should always have a separate account name for each of the services and all that. Just be careful with all that to make sure that a normal administrator would not have access to the normal stuff SQL Server has. But basically, if you have access to the computer, you would get as an administrator, or just have access to the physical hard disks, then or the physical backups actually, then you would get the information that was previously there when you created a file with instant file initialization. This is not just with that. Obviously, if you're a system administrator, have those kind of privileges, you can actually use a hexadecimal editor to show a few stuff. I used to have a demo about that, but they actually fixed it or broke it. Actually broke it. It's more they broke my demo because it started putting out a weird error. I have to see that with Microsoft, but that's a different thing. That was a really bad demo anyway, so who cares? Okay, so we have transparent data encryption. This is something around 2008, so this is not new, and the concept here is a bit different. So before, we actually were worried about the information. In the first case, the information going encrypted over the wire, so that's important. The second case was we need to encrypt the information that's on specific columns so that the DBA does not see it. And with TDE, it's a bit different. So with TDE, you actually encrypt a whole database on your system, but it has some problems. So some of the problems is your server has to have logical access to the keys. So if you are the server guy, if you are the SQL server, then you have to have access to the information and you have to have access to the keys. And that is a problem because most people just don't care and they put the keys just next to the MDF and LDF. So that's just stupid. Don't do that, obviously. So obviously sometimes you don't have enough money to have different storages and different options. Sometimes that is a problem. But the stupidest point I had is when a guy just says, okay, I'm really scared that I'm going to lose the keys, so I'm just going to get a USB drive. I'm going to put the keys in the USB drive as backup. That's a really good idea, but put it in a safe, okay? Put it where no one can touch it. Just don't put it in the drawer where you have cookies and stuff like that, and it's open so that your colleagues can actually go and get cookies for you. And don't do that, because most people do that. You just go there, you open it, and you take the keys, and just get some sort of yeah. You can just go there to the hard disks, even if that's encrypted. You have the keys, you have the MDFs and MDFs, and you just do it. Okay, so obviously that doesn't make any sense. So how do you hack it? Exactly like that. So fear is the biggest part. And one of the other problems is sometimes if you are a system administrator or a DBA, if you have access to the MDFs and NDFs and LDFs, then you probably have access to the keys as well, because no one cares about separating those in terms of security. Okay, so that is one of the big problems. Okay, so this is basically what I mentioned. Oh, and by the way, TDE is actually transparent, as the name says. So if you don't have any of the security options I mentioned before, over the wire, this is going to go unencrypted. So that is a problem. Be careful with it. This is not exclusive. Either of these are not exclusive. You can actually use all of them together. So that is one of the options you can have. I'm not saying use all of them, but use some of them. Just don't don't think this is someone else's problem. Okay, so backup encryption, just to mention this, and then I'll ask for questions. I really like backup encryption because I haven't cracked it yet. Okay, so so just use it. Brent, do you have any questions so far?
No. A couple people were asking, could I use volume encryption or at the SAN in order to get past instant file initialization risks?
Well, that's SAN's problem, I would say. So that would depend on the hardware manufacturer. I would say that depends on how they allocate the new files that you ask for. So if they allocate it, making sure that's clean, that in terms of instant file initialization, if they make sure that's clean when they supply that to the server, let's put it like that, then the instant file initialization is not a problem. Otherwise, if on the origin, on the physical place where you have the storage, that's not being done, and the SQL Server actually sees stuff that's raw, with the old information, then that is a really bad idea to that actually cares about that. But you probably have to configure it. Okay, so let's talk about dynamic data masking, because I really like this, because people think that's a really great security feature. People actually present about that, until you figure out that somehow you can actually hack it really easily. So somewhere, somehow, Microsoft says that's not a security feature, because that isn't a security feature. That's something to help you out, but that's not an entire security feature. So how do you do it? You just create a table. This is by column again. So you just say, okay, my first name is masked with a function that says, okay, so I get to see the first character, and then you have all X's with the remaining ones, and I don't get to see any characters in the end. That's what partial means. Default just adds X's. Email just looks like an email, and you have some other functions as well. And this is the original information, and when you use dynamic data masking, it looks something like this. Okay, so this has some sort of permissions. So you need some permissions which says select is not enough. You need a new permission, which is new in 2016, which is called the unmask permission. So that unmask permission complements the selects, and you need that to be able to see the information. The problem is the unmask permission is not by a table. It's not by column. It's by database. So I'm not sure whose bright idea that was, but it doesn't make any sense. And that should tell you that's not a security feature. That's just something to make it simple for some people. So good things about this is if you don't have the unmask permission, and if you try to do backups with this, the backups go with all X's like this one's. And so you're not backing up any stuff whatsoever. So that's really bad. In another way, that's actually good if you come up with dynamic data masking to prepare some information to send to development team or something like that, because that masks out the information. So that's actually a good way to do it, although there are much better ways to do it, obviously. But I have done it like that because I'm lazy. So be careful, because backups, if you use these backups, will have to have the unmask permission as well. The backup user will have to have the unmask permission. So there are hacks into this, obviously. So hacks are the best stuff to do, and obviously the best example of unmasking phonies is Scooby-Doo. So let's try this. Okay, so you know the demos, you know the tables, all the same tables, dynamic data masking. So I'm just going to repeat all this to make sure the demo works correctly. Same table we saw before. Oh, okay. Still need to connect to it, obviously. Okay, because I turned off the server and on again, so okay. So the table's here, so it's all fine, no problems. So I'm actually going to create an agents table, and the agent table will have seven rows, which are the rows, you know, Daniel Craig, David Niven, George, whatever, Sean Connery, whatever. So I'm going to need that later on. So I'm just going to add the dynamic data masking stuff, and I'm going to say that the specific column, which is called bond actor, will have a partial mask, which says I'm going to show the first two characters, then I'm going to add the dot, dot, dot kind of thing that you see here, and then you have 0 characters in the end, so that's all you're going to see. And then I'm actually going to get grant select on everyone to these tables, because I'm just not going to care. I'm lazy in terms of security, which is basically the exact opposite I'm trying to show you here. So, and before I didn't show because the demo didn't need it before, but I actually created some users. So you have M, which is the woman or the guy, depending on the film, which is the boss. Then you have Q, which is the quartermaster, which is the guy who does the gadgets. He has access to nothing whatsoever because he doesn't know. And then you have one for each of the normal actors. So let's try this. I'm going to grant the unmask to M. And then I'm just going to see it as, I see it as a database owner. So I get to see everything. So it's 26 rows down here. So it's perfectly normal. If I try to execute it as M, I get to see the same thing, because I just granted the unmask on that database to M. However, if I try to use it as Sean Connery, I will not be able to see that column which says bond actor. So I only get to see SE, which I don't know what it is. Obviously, it's Sean. It's in the next one, but I don't know what it is in terms of, you know, data. Okay, so first exploit, which is fun enough. What am I going to do? I'm just going to say where that specific column, like Roger. So as you can see, only R and O are valid. The other ones I'm not supposed to know about. But apparently he said, oh, R, O are valid. So I have 7 rows here with Roger Moore. So Sean Connery is actually seeing Roger Moore's rows, which is okay. But he was not supposed to see that. He was not supposed to understand that's Roger Moore. So this could be Roger Moore. This could be Roger Rabbit. I'm not sure so far. But I need to try to dig into this a bit more. So that is a problem. Why is this a problem? So to contextualize this, I'm going to show you the query plan. And if you see the query plan, this is, I'm not executing that user, by the way, just as a DBO. So here you actually limit that with a where clause like Roger Moore, something like that. Okay, and then dynamic data masking is actually done on this side, close to the selects. Okay, but I'm actually filtering this here, so I'm filtering that before it gets masked. So that's the basic of the hack, basically. So it's easy enough to do it. So let's try the second one. So the second one is close enough. But, oh, sorry about that. Wait a minute. It doesn't work because I included the execution plan. Sorry about that. So let's remove the execution plan. Hopefully this works. Oh, by the way, let's just unrevert this, because that's usually the problem with my demos, because I execute, it comes in with an error, and then I forget to revert. So make sure this works really well. So basically, what I'm seeing here is I'm going to do an inner join with that table which had the actors before, and I'm going to join on the row that's supposed to be encrypted. What I come up with is the new row from the other table, which actually says this one equals to this one, which is valid. So if you just do an inner join with a specific clause, table A equals to table B on a specific row, you can actually see the information. So that's enough to get most of the information, and the information from here is exactly the information from here. But I already guessed who the bond actors were, so I guessed it. So that's not valid if you have random information. That is actually perfect if you have an integer from 1 to a million. Just get a table from 1 to a million and solve the problem through there. Who cares? And you can actually join them and work it out. If it's a date, get all possible days from 19,000s all the way up to now and just join them and you will get it work. But strings are different. So a few months ago, I was actually talking to Dmitry from about SQL Server, and he actually helped me with this demo. He showed me his demo. I did it a bit differently because his demo had a lot of stuff, and I just simplified it. But his stuff is better, clearly. But I simplified it just with some of the letters. So I actually got a table here full of letters, so from A through Z and space. That's the only letters I'm using, so that's all I need. Dimitri's one actually includes all the characters, which is clearly better, but we're not going to need it, so just use it like that. If you need some more, just use some more. And then actually inner join, character by character on that specific column. So you only have 14 inner joins here because that's the amount of characters, the maximum amount I have. But I'm actually lazy. But if you see here, you can actually see Sean Connery here, and then you can actually concatenate that if you want to, but I'm lazy. So all the information is here. So basically, even if you have a table with any number of characters on that specific column, it's no problem. You can actually crack it. So that's done. So easy enough to crack it. However, and I've shown you that in the execution plan, that you can do that in the where and in the from clause. But if you try to do that in the select clause, that's not going to work. And it actually shows you something a bit different. So it's kind of the same demo, but on the select clause, okay? So the problem is it actually adds X's, a weird kind of X's, not the same kind of dots we set out to do. So he actually figured out we're trying to hack it, and he decided to just add X's. So you can do it in the where, you can do it in the from, you can't do it in the select because that's after dynamic data masking has been applied. Okay, so that's the demo for dynamic data masking. I'm not sure if you guys have any questions about.
Yeah, there was. Let's see here. They said, or Teddy says, could you use this technique to unmask dates using joins on dates or date tables?
So I would say for dates is quite easy. Just add all possible dates to a table. If you include hours, minutes, seconds, and stuff like that, then yes, the complexity increases, but just multiply by 24, then multiply by 60, then multiply by 60, and yes, you have a big, big table, and yes, you can do that. The only thing you can't do with this, and you might be able to, are floats, because the same value in floats might actually be represented slightly different, so that might not work, but I would say in most cases it will, but that might not work in floats, but okay, but yes, in most cases this will work, and this is the generic case. So if you try character by character, this actually works, for varchar and varchar and all kinds of all other type like binary and stuff like that. It will work for that as well.
That's it. There you go.
Okay. So SQL Server 2016, I mentioned this slide here because, all this stuff is actually from 2016 on all editions. So this is mainstream now. So people will use it and people will screw it up using it. So be careful with it. Okay, so row level security also has bugs. Okay, so, and I know we're over 1 hour. I hope that's okay.
Oh, you're okay. You have up to 90 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So let's try this. Okay, so role level insecurity. Okay, so always the same demos, still the same demos. And okay, I'm gonna speed this up because I still have one other demo to prepare besides this one. So it's always the same thing, and I'm actually gonna create. So running this again. So yeah, usual stuff. Yeah, this is one. Okay. So the table is there. Make sure it's there. 26 rows, perfect. Okay, so before doing row level security, I'm actually going to create a view, and the criteria is going to be it's close to a select star. Basically, it's a select star for all effects, and I'm actually going to say the criteria is if I am that specific user, if I'm Sean Connery, I will only be able to see Sean Connery's missions. If I'm Roger Moore, I will only be able to see Roger Moore. Otherwise, if I'm M, I will be able to see every mission whatsoever. If I'm Q, I'm screwed. I don't get to see anything. So, okay, so I'm just going to do that. Grant select to public and create that view, and then start to take a look at it. So, if I am M, I'm going to get to see everything, which is fine. 26 rows. So down here, 26 rows. If I'm Sean Connery, yes, I'm Sean Connery. I only see 7 rows. Yes, this is terrible. God save the Queen. Yes, so 7 rows. Okay. Yes. If I'm Roger Moore, also 7 rows. It happens. Okay. So I'm still hoping to see Sean Connery in a new Bond film. It would be worth it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite Bond. So if I am Q, I'm not going to be able to see anything. So that's fine. Okay, but this is still a view. Remember, I'm actually looking at the view thing. So with row level security, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to be lazy with permissions and all that. Recommended stuff. Create a schema just for for the functions or predicates that you use, and then you actually create a function that looks exactly like this that takes on the agent field, which is the field I'm going to verify. So this is basically a function. It basically returns, if this is valid, it returns this thing. Otherwise, it doesn't return anything. And for row level security to work, I'm going to have to apply a security policy to a table. And I'm going to say, I'm going to apply the security policy. I'm going to use that function, which I created on this agent field here, which I'm going to supply as parameter. And this is important, state equals to 1, which sometimes people don't realize that's important. So state equals to 1, okay. And now I'm going to test the same thing, but directly in the table, okay. So as expected, M sees everything, so 26 rows, no problems here. Sean Connery and Roger Moore will only be able to see 7E. Yes, thank you very much. That's very good. If Sean Connery ever sees me, he's going to kill me for doing this crappy voice that doesn't look like his. Okay, so you are Q. You are actually looking directly at the table, but you don't get to see anything. So that's row level security is actually good for that. That's good for a number of scenarios, including migration from really old tables and really old systems that need to see specific stuff. So you can actually use row level security for that as well, not as a security feature, but as a legacy solving feature as well. So let's try this again, but removing the security policy, turning it off actually. So if you are Q, then you have it. You have the table again, so the table is completely clean by now. So let's try to hack this thing. So currently disabled. So if you are Q and this is currently disabled, if you try to do this query, which I'm going to show, I'm just going to take film year and subtract 1969, number like any other. So if a film goes to 1969, that's going to be 0, and divide 1 by 0, that's going to be an error, a divide by 0 error. So what's going to happen is I'm going to see the first films. This is actually by chronological order, so 67 here, but that one you're not going to see because that raised an error. But that's without the security policy. Now let's turn on the security policy, and that's solved. Okay, no problems whatsoever. So in terms of security, that's completely solved by now, okay? So that was a problem that you used to have with CTP1 or something for 2016. CTP2 kind of solved it, CTP 2.0 or something like that. So that's solved. So you think, oh, they solved the problem. You can actually figure out that this column actually has the number 1969. So you can actually hack it, trying to get all possible combinations. Yes, you could. So and you can actually do combinations like I did with dynamic data masking to try to solve that problem. Yes, you could do that. But this is not a security feature anymore, is it? No, it isn't. Or is it? So let's try this again. Now I'm going to do this with with the where clause. So it worked so far here. So this one actually worked. No error was thrown. So the security policy is on. Now I'm going to try this, but doing the same, but in a where clause, and somehow the error still exists, which is bad. So I don't get to see anything, which is a bit more secure than seeing some information and then not seeing anything at all. Okay, so it is a bit better, but still I get to see that an error was thrown with 1969. So I know 1969 is a valid value for that field for at least one record. Okay, so yes, it is possible to hack. It is possible for you to try all possible combinations and try to figure out what information is here. It doesn't limit itself to numbers. You can actually maybe just try to compare that with characters, because characters are numbers as well, from 0 to 255. So it is possible to try that. So it is a hacking possibility. So row level security, that's it. Any questions about this?
No, Daniel said that he just built a solution with this last weekend, so he was worried about what you would see.
Yes. So I was actually confident about row-level security, and the night before SQL Bits, I actually included the last demo, which I'm going to do afterwards. And me and Miguel Oliveira, a great guy that actually works in the UK now, we actually spent some of the time. We should be partying in the disco party at SQL Bits. And we actually came up with the last demo, and we figured out that row-level security was actually easily hacked like this. And we came up with a few extras somewhere along the way. So thank you very much, Miguel. That was really important. Also, thank you, Dmitry, which helped me with the dynamic data masking as well. That's also important. So. Okay, so let's try to go ahead, and this is the last demo, I would say. And yes, this is weird because everybody knows the guy, so can't figure out why this happens. Okay, so the last demo is actually a bit different. So people have done this before. So I've seen people like Paul White do this before, 2011 or something like that. And Paul Randall has actually done this as well. Has actually shown a lot of information like this as well. Me and Miguel, we actually came up with it in a different way, but we still figured out something slightly different than Paul White. But it's worth mentioning that Paul White, Paul Randall actually did stuff in this area here. So it's worth mentioning. Brent, you probably did stuff like this as well. So let's see this. Okay, so try the exact same thing again. So just clear the tables, create a new table. So the table itself is irrelevant. I'm not going to care about the table contents. It's just a table like any other. Oh, by the way, some links here for you to look at, interesting links if you want to look at them. Okay, so one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grant select on everyone just because it's simpler for me. And if you guys are at home, you can actually take this piece of code and you have to create 2 new connections. So I'm going to create 2 new connections, and I'm actually running this. This is a different connection. Oh yes. So something happened here. Oh. Yeah. Okay. So usual stuff. How many times have we done this? And then
Wrong guy.
right. Okay. So I'm gonna execute this as Roger Moore. I'm actually gonna. What am I going to do? I'm just going to take select star from that table, put that into a temporary table called the hack table, and limit that to his own stuff like Roger Moore stuff. Okay, and this is done already. Okay, so I'm actually going to do this for Sean Connery. So I'm first going to connect, so I don't screw this up. Connects. Yeah, because I have to change the database. Sometimes this actually works because I forget in the database the same information is there as well, but not good for the demo. Okay, not this demo in particular. So if I execute this as Sean Connery, I also have a table with hack table stuff. Yes. So the table is called hack table. So now I have 2 hacked tables, which are okay. They coexist together in the TempDB stuff, no problems there whatsoever. So if I'm the database owner and I try to see that table, I get nothing because the table doesn't exist. It only exists for the other 2 connections, right? So, and by the way, this doesn't have to be Sean Connery or Roger Moore. I just put them just to be different, but technically it's by connection only, so the rest is irrelevant. Okay, so let's try to hack this. So if I am Q, I'm going to try to run this. So I'm not going to get a lot into this, but if you go to sysobjects and try to get stuff like that says hack, if you go to syspartitions, if you go to all columns, and I'm just going to run this as Q. So remember, Q is just a user I just created, has no permissions whatsoever. So normal user. So if I am Q, I'm actually be able to see this stuff. So what do I see now? So I see 2 hack tables. Only 2, could be 1,000, depending on the number of users that you have. They are different in terms of name. So this is sequential numbering. So usually this stuff is bigger, but this is sequential, but they have an ID here. So this is the ID that's important for you to go all the way up to the next information. So you have object ID here as well. So you have 2 tables again. One has 7 rows, which was the Roger Moore stuff, and the Sean Connery actually wanted it all. So he has 26 rows. So far, a user which is not supposed to have any information whatsoever already knows about this for the other users. So this is important. And then he actually knows that those tables actually have this columns here for the first table, and for the second table, actually the same columns, which is they're the same, but it could be different, right? So they know exactly what type of what kind of if this is an integer, if this is a character stuff, if what's the maximum length, all that stuff. So he has this information. This is not enough to hack it, to know everything about it, but it's enough to infer some stuff. So you can actually figure out that some stuff is valid from that. So be careful with that, because any user can actually see this. So let's move on. So you need a bit more privileges for this. I haven't explored this that much to be able to figure out exactly what the right privilege is for this, but at least if you are a system administrator, you could actually see this. But at some point in time, I will explore exactly what privileges you need in terms of detail to figure out this. So there is something undocumented. Just go to Paul Randall's link that I included there that has all the information on these undocumented DBCC stuff. So there is a DBCC stuff that says DBCC ins, where you just say tempdb, which is the database. You include the ID for the table that you want. And in this case, I'm just going to do a top one because I have to do one table at a time. Either one is enough. They're kind of the same for the demo purposes. And I'm actually going to get one of the IDs, and I'm going to say -1. In this case, I'm not exactly sure what -1 is. I don't really remember, but Paul Randall's post actually says that. So I'm actually going to run this. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to run this with table results. So I'm going to run this into this table here, which I created. This is not all big int fields. I just said, oh, this is nvarchar max, so the rest is big int, so I just don't care. I just want a table where I can fit all the information without having to worry about what specific data types each field is. I just don't care. So I'm just going to run this, and this is the table I came up with. So I'm using the table with that specific ID to look into that, and then he actually comes up with three rows. This is the page file ID, so this is the file number for the file where the information is stored in tempdb, and this is the page number inside that file. All the other information, I'm not going to talk about that because it's not very relevant for this, but this information so far is. So I'm going to take this information here, and then I'm going to use dbcc trace on, and 3604 is a trace flag where you can actually turn some of the dbcc results that actually go to the logs. Instead of going to the logs, you can actually see them on the screen. There is a lot of information for this. Actually, Claudio Silva told me about this, so thank you very much for that information as well. And we're going to get a cursor that goes all the way up to the 3 records. This could be much more, because the table is actually quite small. This could actually be more. So I'm going to go through all these records and see the information. So I'm going to see 3 sets of records. So the first one isn't that interesting. So not interesting stuff, although you can see you can actually have stuff here that might be hackable. for some other purpose. Okay, so this is the information that you can actually see on sometimes on the hard disk. So the second one isn't that interesting as well. Some interesting stuff, but not that interesting. But the really interesting one is the last one. Be careful when you do this demo. This might not be the last one for you. It is the last one for me. It might not be the last one for you. So I'm just going to add some more stuff here, some size here. And wait, this seems to be difficult somehow. Okay, so I'm just going to go up, and you start to see some information. And this is not good, but suddenly you see some bits and bytes in hexadecimal, a dump, that says live and let die, Roger Moore. Okay, so we're beginning to see the information that's actually on the table. But the information here is kind of raw. It's ugly to see it. So wouldn't it be nice for us to have a way to get the information out? Yes, just move on to the next records. The next records actually describe that by ID, by field. So film ID 9, film title something, film year something. So you have all the information here. It actually says physically where that's stored in this information here. So slot 0, column 1, column 2, whatever. It actually says where it is, but you actually see the record. So if you move on to the next one, you have more hexadecimal stuff, the dumps, and then you see the second records, man with the golden gun, whatever. So remember, we're actually using the Roger Moore table, so this actually shows you only the Roger Moore films. So yes, that is a way for you to hack it. You can actually hack temp tables. So what is the recommendation for this? The recommendation for this is, I'm not going to say not use temp tables. You should, obviously, because some of the things actually need you to use temp tables. But if you have critical information in temp tables, do not use temp tables. If they are small enough, do not use temp tables. Just put that into a table variable, which is stored in memory, not going to be stored in disk. If it's small enough.
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure you're talking it's small enough, because as soon as people put any sizable rows in there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's small enough, just put it as a variable. If it starts to get bigger, you screwed. But you're not supposed to have that much sensitive information in TempDB, in the temp tables. But if you are, you have to beef up security some other way, okay? So it is important for you to know that this can happen in terms of security, and then you decide what you want to do, okay? So it's better to know than just to assume it's safe. It's not. Okay, so in terms of this one, I think that's it. And I'm not sure if you have any questions for this one.
Yeah, if you want, let's see, one Serge says, what should I do about transactional replication? I have transactional replication. How should I secure or encrypt that?
That is actually a good question. Actually, that's a scenario I haven't thought about, because
yeah, by default, usually all the data is unencrypted in your distributor and all that, wherever you're replicating it to.
Actually, that is something I've been meaning to try and figure out what exactly happens there. So I still don't have a suggestion for that, but that is a good point. I will try to come up with something and see if I do add some demos to try to hack it or something like that, right? And maybe do some sort of recommendation on what's the best practice for you to secure that. So currently, sorry, I have no information at the moment.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah.
I can't know everything.
All right, cool.
Okay.
Have you got go ahead.
Okay, so maybe talk about one other stuff. So the demos are out. I have no more demos, just a few slides. So SQL injection, this is here in this session just because one thing, because if you are a DBA, then you might be screwed by the developer guy. Okay, so I am a developer, I am a DBA, I am a sysadmin, I do everything. So I always get screwed by myself. But if you are just a DBA, you have to be careful about developer guys that aren't you, okay? So you know about SQL injection. So if you have information here, you can actually add to the string where, you know, do URL string, you can actually add some information here, like a drop table or some sort of other information 0 equals to 0 to get more information, like on a login form or something like that. So that is a problem. How do you solve it? You just force your developers, you insist on your developers to use a prepared statement. So that's easy enough. You just use prepared statements that actually forces you to use a specific data type on each of the parameters. So that makes sure that this does not happen to you. Okay, so I'm not going to talk a lot about SQL injection. Most of you guys already know about this. This is just worth mentioning because sometimes we just forget about it, but not a big information about that. That I have no demos about that. Okay, so just what some other stuff. So permissions, all other stuff. There is a guy called Rick Byham at Microsoft, really great guy. He actually did this for SQL Server 2014 and 2016. So if you zoom this, I'm not going to do that because this is a really low resolution image. There's actually PDFs for this, and I will make one available as well. So if you look at where I have my mouse here, this is the small stuff where it says select permission, insert permission, update and delete permissions. They're all here in this small square. Everything else, like on the left, they're like server permissions like sysadmin and stuff like that, and other permissions here as well. So it is good for you to know all the permissions that exist in a SQL Server. There is also a version, a 2014 and 2016 version of this poster. Maybe some other version before, I'm not sure, but they are slightly different, but in most cases they're kind of the same. So take a look at them, study them, figure out what exists in terms of permissions, because that might be important for you to secure your installation. Okay, so we're about to finish. I'm just gonna just say one or two conclusions, and then add some any questions that anyone has. So always encrypt the traffic. Obviously, the first demo would not be possible if traffic was encrypted. That makes perfect sense. I have done that, which was to expose ports. It wasn't 1433, it was something else in Azure. Just for the first part of the first demo, just don't do that. Use a VPN, use something else. Just do not expose port to the internet, because obviously there was the SQL Slammer in 2003 that's that's completely screwed up the entire internet. Not because there were a lot of SQL servers, but because the SQL servers that got to be infected, though they were online, and then they sent out a whole number of packets that completely screwed up the routers. Okay, so that was the really big problem with them. And there was a patch for SQL Slammer 6 months before that attack, and no one installed it. No one really cared. So that is important, really important to install. And obviously, you wouldn't be able to do create a user which was a sysadmin if you weren't a sysadmin as well. So least amount of permissions possible. Like if you have WordPress or something like that, it requires you to have permissions to create tables and stuff like that when you create an installation. This is usually for MySQL, but it's kind of the same problem. So you can actually say that, oh, just be a system administrator, create wherever you want, and lower that to the minimum possible that you have, because you're lazy, I'm lazy, we're all lazy. Okay, so just do it the lazy way, but then make sure you secure it afterwards. After it's installed, secure it as well. Okay, so SQL injection, be careful, use prepared statements, obviously, and then finally they're all perfect. The features are all perfect, but you should install the service packs. That's the biggest security problem you have of all, so install them. And finally, if you have any questions, I'm here for you guys.
Wonderful. I think several people said they're really excited about it, and thank you very much.
Okay, so thank
Kyle
you.
Johnson. Oh, very nice. Kyle says,
So here are my
he's glad
contacts. Just ask 2 questions, please.
perfect. Kyle says, definitely very interesting demos and in his top 3 from this group buy, but now that it's 5:30 on a Friday, he has to crack open a cold one. Anybody,
Okay.
if anybody's got questions, yeah, feel free to ask in Slack or in GoToWebinar, although I know a lot of folks are pooped out at the end of the day. Looks like things are coming to a close. I wanted to ask you, how'd you get started working on this stuff?
Oh, I actually tried this in the year 2000. We actually had to do some gateways to pass some information, so I got to see it. And last year, I actually got to try this at SQL Saturday here in Lisbon because I had to change my session. And I talked to André Batista, and I said, "Oh, I can actually try this." And I did the first demo in 4 hours. So fun enough. And this crazy stuff is that this still is a thing. This still is a security issue. So kept it up.
Nice. Martin says, will the scripts be available?
Yes, so I promise you guys, this weekend I will I will put a link on my website. The website is just perfect. It's just a single page with my contacts, but I will put a button there which says link to presentations, and I will make that presentation and some other older presentations available, okay? So I will do this presentation in the next month and a half in some places, mostly in Kiev, and I'll be in other places as well doing different presentations. So I'll make all these presentations there as well. But always look for the most recent presentation because that usually is the presentation you need. Okay, I will make the other ones available as well, but the most recent one is always the most correct one. Okay, and okay, so.
Perfect. That's it. Well, thank you so much, Andy, for Andre, for presenting here at Group Buy. Fantastic session. Lots of people are excited. And thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us today. And have a great weekend, everybody.
Okay. So, Brent, thank you very much for hosting Group Buy. It's a really amazing initiative, really great stuff.
Thanks.
Okay, so thank you very much to you. Thank you very much for Antonio Lourenço, who has helped me out in technical terms here at Microsoft. Thank you very much to Microsoft here at Lisbon as well for letting me use the room and all the stuff that we use. And finally, thank you very much for you guys that watched this presentation. Talk to me at Slack, talk to me anywhere, email, whatever, and I'll be there for you guys, and we'll see you around. Thank you very much.